Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. As always, we are going to be doing another watercolor journal page, and as you can see here, I've actually taped off my page and I'm only going to use half of my journal page. So this is something for those of you who are just beginning or like to paint smaller as you're kind of tiptoeing your way into the wonderful world of watercolor. You don't even have to use a full page in your watercolor journal. You can use half a page. So today we are going to be doing something to hopefully help some of you loosen up a little bit. I get a lot of comments from folks who are like, I wish I could paint more loosely. I have so much trouble painting loosely, or I try to paint loose and I overwork my painting. These are all very common problems. You are kind of right where you're supposed to be in the learning process, so don't worry about it. What we are going to do today is paint nice and loose and trying not to overthink things. So let's go over supplies and materials really quick. Using my Bao Hong sketchbook, I have a size 10 and I'm also going to use a size 4 round brushes. These happen to be Princeton Velvet Touch, but there's many round brushes out there that are wonderful, that'll work great for you. And then my paints are Core, Q-O-R is the name of the company, by Golden. And I'm just going to move my clip here. I have one of these wonderful little binder clips. They hold my sketchbook down. But my Core paints come, well, they don't come in this palette. They are in this palette. They came in tubes and I put them in this palette. And all right, we're going to get started. So the first thing, we're just going to do a loose kind of wildflower field, but we're going to do it with a couple of different techniques to try to help you loosen up and lose a little bit of the control of the painting and let watercolor do the magical thing that watercolor does. So first we're going to come up with a background and we're going to do light washes, wet on wet, blending. We're not going to pick too many colors. So I am going to pick, I'm going to use a little Phthalo blue. And these are going to be light washes. And I'm going to use a little sap green. And let's see, what other color am I going to use? I think I'm going to use Quinacridone Magenta, but I'm going to be mixing it with the Phthalo to get a purple color. So I'll be using Phthalo and Quinacridone to make purples, and also using just some of the, so these are actually going to be my flower colors, this purple and pink color combination, and you'll see when we get to that step. Let me just scooch things into frame a little bit more. There we go. So you'll see when we get to that step of adding the flowers how, because watercolors are transparent, when you layer one over the other, you always have to account for what's going on layer one, because it will interact with layer two. You're not just going to be covering it up with whatever you're using on layer two, like you can with other paint mediums. So if you're painting in acrylic and you put down blue, if you're painting in acrylic and you put down blue, you can color that blue up with a white, you can color that blue up with a yellow, a black, and it doesn't necessarily have to, they don't have to interact with each other. It'll just be gone. It'll be covered up. So just to keep that in mind. All right, for our background, we are going to do wet on wet, and we're going to do that by wetting most of the background, okay? So I am kind of splotching it all around. I'm going to flick some spots so it's even wetter and a little puddly in some areas, but I'm not going to make sure it's an even wash or dampness because I want this to be kind of loose and free flowing. So let's start with Phthalo. I'm going to make a nice watery mix, nice and light, and I'm just going to start to apply that. I want this to be lightest at the top, and it can be a little bit darker at the bottom. I'm going to flick some color on there. Now time for green. And these are going to start to blend and interact with each other. And there are some spots where the paper's still a little bit dry, and that's great. So let's put some darker color towards the bottom. And then these colors mix together and make these great, you know, other shades of blues and greens. And because I'm putting wet paint onto a wet surface, all of that water is combining and making various levels of values. So values are different levels of lightness and darkness of a paint. So look at that. Look at how fun and fancy that looks. And all we did was scrape a little paint onto a wet surface. Now you have to let this dry. You'll notice I did not keep working up here. I want this to be lighter. I'm not going to keep messing with it. I'm going to leave it alone. And I even have, look, white spot, white spot. There's no water and no paint on any of these little spots. There's not a ton of them. There's one over here, but there's enough to give this some breathing room. Let some white shine through. This is very light right here, while these are very dark and intense and saturated, but I'm not going to keep working it and working it and working it over and over again, because you're going to then just get a muddy kind of mess. This way you can still see the delineation between different colors, but they are mixing in certain places. The water is going to help them keep doing that, and we still have more layers to do. But let's leave it, let it dry, and then we'll do our next layer. Okay, we're back. Everything is dry. Look how beautiful these transitions are. These are just so fun and soft and delicate, but at the same time pretty striking because of the contrast between some really darker areas fading into these much lighter areas. So lots of fun. So now we're going to add some flowers, some petal shapes on top of it. And like I said, I'm going to use magenta mixed with phthalo to get varying shades of purple. So when we use magenta on top of blue, so let's just we're going to do these little tiny petal shapes. So automatically, by just putting the magenta on top of the blue here, you're going to get purple. Okay, so depending on how much or little you put, so you can have lighter, so that's a very light one, that's a much darker one. And I'm going to do a few of these all about, but trying to keep them pretty transparent. So just these tiny little petal shapes. I'm going to do a couple of petals, but then I'm going to let it dry. And I'm going to paint some other petals on top in these clusters. You'll see what I mean. So we're going to do like 1s and 2s and 3s. All right, let's just put on a few more, and then while those dry, do one down here. And then I'm going to put on another petal onto some of them. So these are dry here. I'm going to take a slightly darker color and kind of just marry it. I still want it to be transparent, so you might have to take a little paint off your brush. So that one's a little dark. Let's go back to the lighter color. This one, I'm just going to pull some color out. Just went a little too dark. There we go. Ah, much better. So I just used a paper towel to pull some of that color out. And now I'm going to take some green and I'm going to use the tip of my brush. So I'm using sap green, nice and dark. And I'm going to try to make some very thin tip of my brush. I'm going to let it skip a little bit and I'm not going to fix it. And if you need to use a thinner brush, you can. I'm going to add a few little leaves on. Let's see, I'm going to bring this one all the way down here. I'm going to add just a few little tiny leaves. All right, so now we got some fun stuff going on here. Let's add a little bit of splatter. Okay, I'm going to splatter some stuff. This is going to drive some people crazy. This is going to make other people feel great. I'm just taking my pink and my purple, loosening it up, getting some splatter on the other page. I'm even going to put in some I think like little round baubles in this color. And let's think about here, what else could we do? You know what, let's put on a few. I'm going to use some of this blue. I don't know if I'm going to like this. I'm going to put on a few blue flowers. Actually, let's go a little bit more purpley blue. There we go. Yeah, that looks good, I think. What do you guys think? And you can see I'm being very loose with my petals. They're just flower-like. They're not perfect flowers. I'm going to drop a little green in. And then this gives it this nice glowing kind of ethereal look. It's fun, right? And I still have, look, some of these white spots are still untouched. Just by avoiding those spaces. Let's do a little phthalo in green to make a really dark green here. And I'm going to do just a few more little spots on the bottom here. There we go. We can even throw in a few little green splatters towards the bottom. All right, there we go. Our nice loose wildflower painting. We can peel off our tape. Ooh, this was not the best tape to use because you can see we have a little bleeding through there. This is actually really expensive artist tape. And masking tape works better apparently. So there we have it. Our nice little wildflower loose painting. Hopefully this helps some of you loosen up a little bit, have a little fun, wet on wet, lose a little bit of control. We also learned a little bit about overlapping and transparency and what happens with colors when you put them on top of the other. So thank you so much for following along. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Share with a friend if you have a friend who you think might like this video as well. Leave a comment, and thank you to my super thanks commenters and supporters. You guys are amazing. I can't express how grateful I am for you. So thank you. If you want to be a super thanks contributor, you can do so by just finding that super thanks button along the bottom of the video. And you can write more than just thanks in there, just giving you a heads up. A lot of people just write thanks and support me through a contribution, but you can also change that to say whatever you want it to say. And I see that first before I see any other comments. So thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day and happy painting. Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei. I'm so excited to paint with you. We're here for another day in our watercolor journals, and we are going to be doing the second half of this page. So in the last video, we did this loose wildflower wet on wet background painting, and we had a lot of fun. But we showed you that you don't always have to use the whole page in your watercolor journal. You can split it up into smaller sections. So we did that, and now I'm going to paint on this other section here. So I have been doodling a lot. So I know I do swatch and doodles every once in a while in here. So we're going to do something like that. I've been doing a lot of ink drawings, and I really have this one flower design in my mind that I want to do on here, but I want to incorporate watercolor into it as well. So I think I'm just going to make a really fun loose background like I did over here, and then do this flower doodle on top. So I can show you, it's a very kind of stylized illustrative design. So something like this that we're going to put over top. So for the background, I was thinking something similar to this where it was very loose, wet on wet, but I want to kind of make it, I'm going to do two of these. So I want the background to kind of have a circular pattern to it. Let's put on some more tape real quick. I'm sorry I didn't do this before, but that way I have some nice clean edges, and maybe I'll even have the pattern go right out of frame. So that can be really fun too, when you go right outside your frame. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so there we go. Take our clip and put it kind of on the edge over here. All right, so I think I'm going to do some yellows and pinks, which will also merge into some peaches, oranges. All right, so let's get out some Quinacridone, Magenta, and then let's look at this Nickel Azo Yellow. So I haven't used this a lot, this color out of my palette. I used to use it all the time, so I'm going to use it today. I don't know why. It's just, it has a funky color. It doesn't look like a yellow in the palette, so I feel like I just don't gravitate towards it. It looks more of a brownish color, but it's this very bright yellow. So I've just been using the Cadmium and the Diarylide yellow a lot more. All right, so I'm going to do wet on wet again, but I'm going to do a very loose kind of circular-ish pattern over here. Almost looks flower-esque, and I'm just going to start to drop color. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I know this looks crazy, but I think it could be fun. We're gonna find out. And again, maybe we can make one section of it. So again, I'm just kind of zhuzhing my water and my paint all about, and I'm just using kind of a circular motion. Trying not to mix stuff too much. What if we drop some pink in here? Very tie-dye-esque looking. Let's actually mix some together to make an orange. That's almost like a red orange. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna let that dry. That's super crazy fun and funky. And yeah, we're gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna doodle on top. All right, we're back and we are all dry. I am gonna find an appropriate pen to use. That is a brush pen, too thick. I think this 0.5. So I have a 0.5 Artist Loft pen. This is just a Micron is another great, and I think that's what's linked in my bio. I use Micron pens. These just are ones I picked up recently because a lot of my Micron pens are dead from use. And this is just a name brand from our local chain art store. So I'm going to do 2 of these flowers. I'm going to do one up here. I'm going to start with my center. And I'm just going to make a wobbly little center like that. And then I'm going to start to build on petals and wrap them around. And you can see all of my petals are kind of widest in the middle here, and then they get narrower as they come closer to its neighbor. And they all kind of overlap. And we're going to keep going. You can make smaller ones and slightly thinner ones that are closer. But now our flower is a little oblong shaped like this. So we just want to fill out the circular nature of it. It's not going to be perfect. You don't want it to be a perfect ball. But you do want it to feel round. Oh, this is fun. All right, I want this to kind of go off the page. Super big bloom. But I also have to make sure it feels connected and like it's not out of control. Okay, I'm going to do one more over here. All right, so that's that. And I'm going to do another one down here. That was so easy, but looks so fun. Okay, let's do another one down here. And these might run into each other. And then I am going to add some of the little stripy contour lines. They're not even really contour lines. They're just illustrative elements. And this is obviously the vantage point of if you were like looking down inside a flower from the top down. And you want to make sure your petals don't perfectly stack, like always parallel to each other, that they're offset. There we go. All right, and then let's add in This is fun. I love this. Do you ever make something and you're just happy with it? Now let's see if this next step makes me like it or hate it. I'm going to add in these little design elements. I'm not going to put them in every petal, just in a few. And I'm going to try to make sure they're not right next to each other. I'm just doing curved lines. I want them to be close together, but not so much so that they start to blend together, that they're their own striped element. Yeah, super fun. So this is definitely more of a doodle drawing journal page than a watercolor one. The watercolor was very simple, but for those of you who like structure, this can be really great. But also it gives you that element of loosening up with that background and not taking it too seriously, just playing with that wet on wet. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to add some additional elements, like some leaves in the sides or the corners, but this is just fun like this. I think I'm done with the stripes on the other one. I might do one more like out here. But like I said, I don't want it to be overwhelming. I don't want to do all of them, because then I think it would be too heavy, too much going on. But this is just enough to give it some interest. And let's do like one over here. Just trying to make sure it feels balanced, but not like perfectly symmetrical, if that makes sense. That it still feels a bit organic. And maybe one more. I'm going to do one more here. Let me start in the middle. And all the way out. All right. Yeah, that looks great. So I could just leave it like this. You could add more paint to some of the areas if you wanted to, as long as you have an archival waterproof permanent pen that you use, then you could add more paint to it. I don't think I'm going to add more paint, but I might add in like a leaf element over here. I'm just going to add, and these leaves aren't even going to make sense for this flower. This other little stylized leaves. I'm going to do one over here. Go right off the page. And to kind of connect them to the flower design, I'm going to add, so I have these weird little, almost like peacock feather type looking leaf elements. I'm going to add the little stripy design to them. I did that kind of weird, the way it goes one way and then the other. They should probably all go the same way. And I'm still doing it very weird. All right, but that was super fun. I love this little design. I love the loose watercolor background and then the structure of the ink flowers. Tell me what you think. Is this totally outside of your comfort zone? Not what you're looking for in a journal? Fun to kind of experiment and do something a little different than what I normally do? I really enjoyed it. And that's what journals are for, is for experimenting and doing things outside of your comfort zone, trying new things. You definitely can learn lots by playing in your journal. So I thought this one was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Shayna Cersei. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Go ahead and check out the description for links to supplies and materials that I use regularly, as well as thank you so much to my super thanks contributors. You guys are awesome. I can't thank you enough. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to be a super thanks contributor, you can go ahead and find the super thanks little button under the video, and you can write any message that you want. But go ahead and leave a comment as well. You don't have to be a super thanks contributor to write a comment. And I try to answer, or at least like, heart, reply to each one. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you for our next watercolor journal page very soon.